The governor of Kufa insisted that Zaid should leave, but Zaid kept making excuses to stay in Kufa. So you see, the Umayyads did not want such a figure to reside in Kufa, especially since he would be surrounded by an army of political supporters, because all the Shia are in Kufa, and then you have such a remarkable personality like Zaid in Kufa. That would be a problem for the Umayyads. While Zaid was making excuses, it seems he was buying time. It seems he was discussing some serious matters during his stay. Still, it seems that he was not convinced that he should make a military move against Bani Umayyah. Pressured by the governor, he finally had to leave to Qadisiyah. However, some of his Shia, they followed him, and they reassured him of their loyalty and numbers, and finally managed to persuade Zaid, even though his cousin Dawood bin Ali bin Abdullah bin Abbas was advising him not to trust the Shia and reminding him of what had happened to his fathers before him. Zaid returns to Kufa, however, under disguise. So he goes into hiding. He conceals himself. And while hiding in Kufa among his supporters, he's calling towards his leadership in secret. So he amassed followers all around the lands, and some of these Shia were caught. And because they were caught, Zaid's whole plan seems to have fell apart quickly. Zaid wanted to wait patiently until he builds a lot of supporter base, so that when his callers reached the different lands, they would get reinforcements. But because some of the Shia were caught, he had to kind of initiate, he had to start his rebellion before the time that he had specified, and before the time that he had promised his followers. So that's what happened, and that was unfortunate. Authorities in Kufa went into alarm mode and ordered all the Kufans who are loyal to the Umayyads to remain within the confines of the Grand Mosque. This way it's clear who has the intention of rebelling and who is peaceful. As for Zayd's Shia, they began the revolution. They were chanting slogans, death slogans, and they were shouting their leader's title, Al-Mansur. They had given Zayd the title Al-Mansur, the victorious one, or the one who was granted victory, basically by God, they meant. And because Zayd's plan was exposed to the authorities, he had to take hasty action without proper preparations. The Shia leaders in Kufa, sensing danger, wanted a way out of this mess. They wanted a way out of this mess. They realized this thing is not going to go well. They gathered the Shia, who were basically their followers as well, and went to Zayd and confronted him. So look at this elaborate plan these guys came up with. So they went to Zayd, and just before the revolution was starting, and they were like, "What say you of Abu Bakr and Omar? What do you say about these two men?" And he answered, "May God have mercy on them and forgive them. I've heard only good things about them from my family." That was Zayd's reply. And so they replied, "They usurped your authority and snatched it from your hands." And then Zayd responded, "Although they kept us from our rights, yet they ruled with justice and upheld the Quran and the Sunnah." So here I need to make a comment. And this is one of the things some of the Shia used to twist early narrations. Notice here Zayd said, "They kept us from our rights." What does he mean by our rights? A lot of the Hashemites believed that they were more entitled for leadership than anybody else because they are the close relatives of the Prophet ﷺ. And Ali ibn Talib, they believed, had great merits in this and that, and he had the right to rule, at least more than the Umayyads. So when they said our right, they believed that they had more of a right to it than others. The extremist Shia will twist this and make it mean that, no, our right, meaning that they were divinely appointed by God. And this is clearly not what Zayd said, because notice Zayd's statement that Abu Bakr and Umar upheld the Quran and the Sunnah. If it was a divine order that Ali ibn Abi Talib becomes the Khalifa, then how are Abu Bakr and Umar upholding the Quran and the Sunnah? That means they're opposing the Quran and the Sunnah. So this is just something that I wanted to clarify. And this is out of many evidences that they did not believe that there was divine appointment. And Zayd's replies were clear. If Abu Bakr and Umar had snatched it from Ali and disobeyed the Prophet directly, there would be no excuse. They would have no excuse, literally. I myself couldn't find them an excuse if that's exactly what they did. Anyways, keeping on with this debate that was taking place, the Shia leaders replied to Zayd. They replied and said, so why do you fight now if those two hadn't wronged you as opposed to these ones? So they're basically saying, okay, why are you fighting the Umayyads now? And you're saying that they wronged you and took your right. And why aren't you refusing to fight Abu Bakr and Omar, who also took your rights? So Zayd answered them, they're nothing alike. He said, they are nothing alike. He said, our rulers today oppress me, you, and the rest of the nation. I only call you to God's book and to prophetic tradition. If you answer my call, you shall be among the happy. Whereas if you refuse, then I am not your guardian. The Shia leadership showed their true intentions when they ordered Zayd. At this point, they were giving him orders. They said, unless you disown those two, Abu Bakr and Omar, meaning, we shall reject you and won't fight by your side. Zayd's final response to these people was, I seek refuge in God. Then in that case, take your leave, for you are the rejectors. Rejectors in Arabic is Rafidah, and that's why the Shia are called Rafidah. And from here, from this point in history, the label of Rafidah emerged, and it became popular for extremist Shia, especially those who cursed the companions. As for those Shia that remained alongside Zayd, the political Shia that had no issues with Abu Bakr and Umar, they were labeled as Zaidiyya. And they were moderate for the most part. So, that was not the only incident that happened. We can mention other incidents. It seems some of them went even further to try to justify their abandonment of Zayd. Zayd was questioned about a whole bunch of things. In one report, he was asked about Abu Bakr's judgment regarding Farak. And he declared that he agreed with Abu Bakr's judgment. He says, if I was in charge of those lands, I would have ruled exactly as Abu Bakr did. And this is sahih and is found in the books. In fact, Zayd confronted one of the early Shia leaders in Kufa, who was one of the people behind the fabrication of many of the ahadith and the fabrication of many of the deviant beliefs. And the man was called Abu Ja'far al-Ahwal. He is referred to as Shaitan al-Taq. And this extremist, he was from the first to preach that the leadership among the Hashemites was limited to specific individuals, as opposed to most Shia who believed that it belonged to all Alawites, all of the children of Ali could have the leadership. No, this guy was preaching that it's only select individuals who should be leaders. So this happened while Zayd was in hiding in Kufa. He called this big Shia leader in Kufa, and his name was Al-Ahwal, Abu Ja'far. And he requested that he gives him his support for his revolution because Abu Ja'far al-Ahwal had many supporters. But Abu Ja'far refused. So when Zayd asked why, Al-Ahwal said, because you are not the leader whose obedience is obligatory. Zayd told him that there was no such thing as a leader whose obedience was obligatory. And that if there was such a thing, then his father would have informed him about this divine appointed leadership. Al-Ahwal arrogantly replied, your father was scared that if he informed you and you rejected his divine leadership, you would be doomed. So basically, these extremist Shia leaders found ways to wiggle out of the revolution. And they told Zayd, no, you're not the true leader. And they went to his relative, Ja'far. Now, let's end this chapter by talking about the Zaidi Shia and what they believed, because this is a sect, as you saw, that just emerged. The bulk of the Zaidi Shia believed that Ali's children should rule, due to their virtue, due to their blood relations and seniority, and therefore they had a greater claim than anybody else. A portion of them, and these guys, by the way, had no issue with Abu Bakr and Omar. A portion of them were affected by Saba'i hadith. As we said, there's hadith that were being fabricated at the time. And a portion of the Zaidiyya, because they were a part of Shia community, were affected by some of these ahadith and some of these lies. And they began to say that Ali, Hassan, Hussein are legatees. They were awsiya, meaning people who were directly designated by the Prophet ﷺ for leadership. But they viewed that Ali had approved the leadership of Bakr and Omar. He gave them bay'ah and he respected them and loved them, and so they ruled justly, and they still had no issue with Abu Bakr and Omar. So this was the secondary group. And out of these group, there was another one that was more extreme, known as the Jarudiyya, followers of Abu Jaruds. And these guys were affected even more by the ahadith of the Saba'iyya. And they said that Ali was publicly and directly appointed. And so here, we have Ali, and then Hassan and Hussein were also directly and publicly appointed. And they preached that the nation refused them, and therefore the nation apostated. So for them, the entire nation, they held the exact same belief as the Rafidah and Saba'iyya, that the entire nation apostated after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. And they cursed the Muslims for this, just like the Rafidah of our days, except they're still Zaidi. So the difference is they don't believe in like a specific number of imams. They only believe, they believe that anybody basically from the children of Hassan and Hussein who rebels with the sword against the tyrant rulers is to be accepted as a leader. That's the difference between them and other Imami Shia.